Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Torah on Tap. All right, just before we begin, a couple of brief announcements. For those of you that do not know, tomorrow morning, the fast of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz begins. I'm not sure exactly the time. I think at 4:40, 4 something, whatever it is, very early in the morning. So if you're the kind of person that needs to get up and get a drink, you totally can and you totally should. The question I often get asked is, can I brush my teeth tomorrow? And the answer is, yes, you can. All right. Anyway, it's not Tisha B'Av or Yom Kippur. Having said that, tomorrow there is a program here early in the morning. You're more than welcome to join us for Shachrit. There are 2 minyanim, or maybe even 3. I'm not even sure right now. There's usually there's 3 minyanim, 6:30, 7:30, and 8 o'clock. Thank you so much. There will be a classes here tomorrow with Rabbi Fari, Rabbi Mizrahi, Rabbi Hajioff, and myself from 9 o'clock until 10:30, 30-minute slots. Mine will be a little longer because mine's at the end. Until 11. Okay, until 11. There you go. I'd love to see all of you there. And if you can't make it, don't worry about it. You could watch it from the comfort of your home. TorahAnytime.com/Chazak. And you'll find these classes being streamed. Okay, one last announcement is that for Shabbat Nachmu, we are organizing a trip to Israel. We are spending 7 days in Israel. The first 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're going to be in Yerushalayim. We're staying at the David Citadel Hotel. We're having all of our meals there. And we're going to do some light local touring. And in preparation for a volunteer trip, we're spending Sunday to Thursday on an army base with soldiers and soldierettes, volunteering, doing whatever they need for us to help them, be more productive and so on and so forth. Really, I was told that aside from doing the work that we're doing there, it's mostly really a morale boost for the soldiers, just seeing people coming and caring for them. So if you're interested, there are still some spots available. The total cost on the ground, not including flight, is $1,300. If you have miles, you should totally take advantage of them, because Israel is like a very profound place, and who knows what could happen tomorrow. If you could go, you should go now. All right. It's a very cool crew. It's a very cool crew also, that's true. Yes, there are some amazing people that are going. So now, having said all that, I'd like to segue into our topic. We are starting a new topic the next weeks and months ahead, trying to master the elements. Now, for me as a kid, the elements were tied into all kinds of Oriental films, dealing with all kinds of meditation and martial arts and whatnot. Certainly, there was no room for these things in Judaism. If you were an Avatar person, the last Airbender and whatnot, and you were in that world of the elements, that's how you related to them. That's certainly how I related to them. But when I started finding some sources within Judaism, there are actually very clear and obvious sources about how the elements play a very crucial role in the development of a human being. And what's so amazing is that it's in plain sight and you never really pay attention to it because it's just there and you think it's part of a story. So for example, the whole of Sefer Bereshit is really an expression of how you and I are supposed to be involved in what we call tikkun hamidot, a reestablishing, a fixing of, if you will, of our character traits. That's at the core. That's what everything in the Torah is about. As a matter of fact, you'll see later that the 6 days of creation are each one is a binyan, a building, a tree of, or a climbing ladder of these ideas of the 4 elements. And we're going to break it down. And what we're going to do is, today's an introduction, and I want to end on time. Today's an introduction, and God willing, over the next few weeks, we're going to go through each one of these midot, because you and I are a conglomerate of all 4. Forget about what you've learned about, in terms of the zodiac and your fire sign or earth sign. I'm not thinking about it in those terms. Drop everything you know about your sign for a moment, and I want to re-educate you about how the rabbis for the last 900 years, including Harambam, right, who was not a Kabbalist, Rav Chaim Vital, Rav Chaim of Volozhin, the Arizal, and so many others, Rav the Alshech, all wrote about these signs in terms of how we can use these particular traits to have a deeper awareness of the self. If you think of it in these terms, this is how I think of it at least. Maybe it'll help you because it helped me. There are different stages of consciousness that each of us go through. Like, think about who you were as a as a 15-year-old, right? That little guy, that girl, walking around, so clueless, so innocent. Little did you know, right? The world's a very different kind of place. And as you got older, from 15 to 20, think about the gap about what you knew about the world and life as a 15-year-old versus a 20-year-old. And then think about the difference between a 20-year-old and a 25-year-old. And keep going every 5 years. And then think about the contrast between being a 15-year-old and a 30-year-old, right? It's ginormous. So what's so interesting is that when we think about those ideas, we're just thinking about my identity. But are you aware of the fact that your identity itself is layered and made up of other layers of parts of who you are? And there are base layers that are there that are give you a particular, that express themselves in a particular kind of way because of your nature and so on and so forth. Last summer we were dealing with the zodiac and how the zodiac impacts you. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at a very holistic approach at how we can understand ourselves so we could use that understanding to become better, greater versions of the self. And there's this idea, like it says in source number 1 over there, David Melech says, Hashemayim, Hashemayim, Hashem, Haaretz, Levnei Adam, this idea of Shemayim va'aretz, that there's this duality between heaven and earth, that these two different realms that God has created. And it's true, though, that God has, He created the heavens belong to Him, but the earth belongs to Him as well. And what the Chachamim point out in this pasuk is that every aspect of everything between heaven and earth is all under the domain of God. And in order for this class to be somewhat meaningful, let's just talk for a minute about just belief in God. I just want to make sure that this is clear for those people that are watching and those people that are here. I think it's about, we've drilled the depth of something like 0.4% into the depths of the earth. We know nothing about the planet. Like, we haven't gone that far. Meaning, whatever we drilled, the 7, I think there's 7 miles of Earth to we get to like the highest layer of like the crust and the mantle, and like I think we've only gone down like 4 or 5%, very little. We haven't gone down very far. We know nothing about the planet. Okay, we know more about the center of the moon than we know about the center of the Earth. We know more about the center of the sun than we do about the center of the Earth. We know nothing about what's happening in the solar systems around us. We're just beginning to understand now. Those of you that are followers of science, you know what the James Webb telescope is. It's this fascinating telescope that was sent out a couple of years ago, and the images that we're getting from there are fascinating, they're amazing, they're beautiful. And what's happening right now, physicists are like in a candy store, sitting there like watching these images and like, oh my gosh, we got it all wrong, we have to reinvent the textbooks. Everything we know about the universe is different. And what they're finding is that there's so much order in universes that are so young, it defies all logic of everything they know about the creation of the universe. And now they're beginning to say that we see so much order in things that are so young, it's hard to say that there wasn't something that was there that organized and set these things in motion. So the nature of our own understanding of the universe is changing, and similarly, in the same way, externally things are changing for us because of the information we're getting. It's supposed to happen internally for us as well. We are a microcosm of a greater universe, and everything that's happening in the outside world and universe is reflected in us as human beings. So there's this idea of something called tikkun olam versus tikkun hanefesh. Okay, tikkun olam you're all familiar with, the idea that you and I are here to go ahead and repair the world and make it a better, greater place. But there's two types of tikkun that exist. There's something called tikkun katan and tikkun gadol. One is the work of the inner self, the you, or as in Freudian terms, the id, the ego, and the superego. And there's something called tikkun gadol, the outer world around you. Okay, so you have a little bit of a summary of it here. So the outer journey, on the one hand, we're here to impact, to build, to create in a world that seems so severely flawed. We're each placed here to fix it in a way that we can. To do this, we need to step up, self-actualize, and to contribute. Regarding this this aspect of our mission, we are expected to make a difference in the world, leaving behind a better world than the one we found when we got here. That's our mission. Every single person here wakes up in the morning, and asks themselves, what am I doing here? Some of us just wake up and just on autopilot, but if you're a master ninja of life, you wake up in the morning with an understanding of exactly what it is you're tasked to do here. What is your mission here? Are we just on autopilot, or are we thinking through as adults who we want to be and where we want to go? Olam Katan, this inner world, right? This is very different. The inner world is me trying to go deeper and deeper to know ourselves better, so that we have a deeper understanding of how I connect to that deepest godly part of my soul, right? So it's like a diamond, right? That's buried in the dirt and the rough, and then eventually through that polishing and so on and so forth, and all that pressure, you finally have this brilliant diamond that's able to sparkle and use the light around you to show you all spectrums of the rainbow, right? This is the real tikkun olam that's supposed to happen, right? There's something that we do on an outer level and on an inner level. Everyone here understands, like, I go to work, I got to be a good person. I go to synagogue, I'm part of a community, I got to be cordial, I got to be polite. That's beautiful, but that's the least important part of what your job is in this planet. It's all about appearances. It's about superficialities. It's about externalities. That is not prime. That is not primary. The primary parts of our work on this planet is to go deep within the self. The idea that tefillah, prayer, for most people, I would say, is lost. Most people today are so ADD, they just can't sit there. It's too long. It's taking too much time. I read so much faster. You're so slow. I can't concentrate. But the idea of just spending time with the self, no screen, no phone, no music, no nothing, just being alone with your thoughts and just trying to understand what you are and thinking very, 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 very focused on what it means to be the best version of yourself. And then asking, well, why am I not that version? Why is it that I'm unable to express that part of myself? What's lacking? What energy could I tap into? I'm feeling frustrated, I'm locked, I'm stuck. How do I get out of the rut? How do I change things? All those things are real questions we need to be asking. And they're all there for us to choose to want to be something more. And in that space of you and I choosing to become something more, we accomplish the unthinkable. We could take something as earthy as this thing called matter, my body, right? And I could allow it to become something that connects to the divine. That's what we're here to do. You and I are here. The Vilna Gaon says the whole purpose of life is for you to do one thing. It's for tikkun hamidot. Otherwise, what's the purpose of living? That's his quote in Even Shlema, right? That everything in Judaism at the core is about you becoming the best you that you can become. We see this, by the way. Sefer Breshit, right, is a book of stories, right? Do we need it? No. As a matter of fact, Rashi says, why did the Torah begin with the story of Breshit? Start with the first mitzvah in the Torah. If the whole entire purpose of the book, the 5 books, is about the laws, right? Then just tell me about the laws. Why do I need the stories in there? Just give me a law book. There's rules, there's regulations. Just tell me the rules, forget the stories. Why begin with the stories? Why put so much emphasis on Genesis, the creation story, the beginning of those stories of Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve, and going on, the Noah and the flood, and then the Tower of Babel, and then Abraham, and so on and so forth. Why do I need to know that stuff? Who cares? Make a separate book, call it the Stories of the Jewish People, Pirkei Avot, whatever it is, right? And sell that separately. This is a smart thing, like make 2 books, separate books, right? And you'll have 2 bestsellers. And you have one which is the law book, and you have the other one that's the story book. Keep it separate. Why mix the whole thing together? Because in Judaism, they're somehow interwoven, they're interconnected. How could you be someone who follows laws that doesn't have a good sense of self? If you're not working on morality, if you're not working on taking responsibility, if you're not spending time on really taking an accountability of what it really means to be the best you, the laws are useless. They don't work. You see what's happening today in America, where we have all these laws. They're useless. The laws don't work. Universities, they could teach whatever they want. If there's no moral code, if there's no concept of that you and I were created b'tselem Elokim, if there's no idea that each human being has is reflecting an aspect of godliness in them, the laws mean nothing. You could be sophisticated barbarians like the Germans were in World War II, and you could justify the murder of babies. 1.5 million children were murdered. If you think about that, think about the days. They were killing about 10,000 kids a day. It's insane, right? It's crazy numbers. These were not just thugs from the streets. These were the SS officers. 44% of all the SS officers had a bachelor's or a master's degree. These were highly educated people. How do you get there? Well, if there's nothing spiritual, if there's nothing godly about a human being, then I could justify anything. I'll rationalize it. I'll come to all kinds of interesting conclusions. At the core, the founding fathers of this country understood that in order for democracy to work, in order for the freedom of speech to work, you have to recognize that somebody else, no matter how much you hate them, is still considered Tselem Elokim. We've lost that in this country. And it wasn't recent. We've lost it several times before. Going all the way back to the assassination attempt, the assassination wasn't an attempt, a successful assassination of Abraham Lincoln, right? So he's not a person, he's an animal. It's ideas, and your ideas and my ideas, they don't stim. They don't work anymore. So I'm gonna execute you so I can get what I want. That's the world that we're in. If we don't have a world where you and I can speak and communicate, we can't agree to disagree. We don't have a space where you and I can talk a little bit about how things are different. It's interesting, the two main characters of the Talmud, the most important two guys, someone by the name of Shammai and the other guy, Hillel, right? We know that they argued on everything, right? But we know that the students of Hillel and Shammai married each other. How do they do that? It doesn't happen today. Democrats today, you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, different shittot, forget about it. Not a good shidduch, not a good marriage. Don't even go there. I'm not doing it. You're voting for Kamala Harris? Forget about it, over. You're crazy. Only a Majnun person would do that, right? So, but you're voting for Donald Trump? He's a crazy guy, right? So, how did Hillel and Shammai's students marry each other? Now, what's interesting, the Gemara tells us that Shammai, the students were sharper and smarter than the students of Hillel. Better arguments, refined, super clear, and so on and so forth. Whereas Hillel, right, they were not as refined, but they were more open and loving. Now, when Hillel, the students, would teach Shammai's principles and arguments, right? Remember, the halacha is, we're posek like Hillel. The halacha always goes like Hillel, not Shammai. Why? If Shammai's students were smarter, then the halacha should go like Shammai. If they had better arguments, shouldn't the best argument win? But it's not always about the best argument. The reason why we're posek like Hillel is for the following reason. Ready? When the students of Hillel would teach a halacha, what they would first do is tell you what Shammai's position was. Out of respect for Shammai. I don't agree with him, but let me tell you what Shammai said. And this is his argument, and lay it out clearly. And then afterwards, Hillel would go ahead and lay out the case for Hillel's position. That is who we are posek like. Someone who takes a path of respect and shalom. It's not about truths for the sake of arguing and truths. Ultimately, it's about doing what's right. If what we're doing is not making us into better, greater human beings, we got to re-examine what we're doing. So, Pasuk says, "Ve'echlom v'hinei sulam utzav ha'aretz." There's different rungs of reality. You look at the Al-Shach on this, actually, it's very fascinating. Different rungs of reality. You can turn the page over. That talk a little bit about this idea that there are layers to our development that you and I need to go ahead and try to connect to. Pasuk over there says, right? Man is created from the earth, the lowest of the elements. There are 4 elements, and we're going to see them very shortly, how there's a hierarchy of these elements, and how we're all connected. Now, I want to show this to you based on Chaim Vital. Number 5, he says as follows: the story of creation moves from the creation of light to the creation of the firmaments, right? Fire to earth, okay? The sky that separates the waters, and then the gathering of the waters to expose the land and vegetation. Now, day 1, you have light, right? No form, no substance. Day 2, the firmament was made. Gases of slightly more form. Day 2 and 3, water and liquid, right? And you'll see why I think they're connected. Day 2 and 3, water and liquid, with even more form and more density. Day 3, land, which has the most form and it's completely dense. Cycle appears itself again in the second part of the creation. Day 4 and 6, you have it again. Day 4, the sun and the moon, going back to the light. Day 5, birds to the sky. Day 5, fish, water. Day 6, land again, going back. So you have these things cycled into the first 7 days of creation. You have these pairs of these elements reappearing over and over again. Remember, hakol holech achar harosh. Everything goes after the beginning. And therefore, if these 4 elements were planted into creation, therefore you and I are somehow these elements are integrated into our essence and our being. So what are these 4 elements? Number 6, the earth element, right? That is the goof, the physical body. Connection to the physical needs represents our basic survival needs: food, shelter, safety, and reproduction. These are the parts of your body. These are the parts of your consciousness that's not even aware of what's happening. You're hungry, you eat. You got to take care of your basic needs. That's totally fine. Okay. You crave security, stability, consistency. If your focus is bodily maintenance and the practical use of the resources and relationships. Super mundane. Water. That's the element of feeling. Connecting to emotion, desire, moves beyond survival to seeking pleasure, and experiencing emotions like love, fear, and hope. Right? Emotions can be overwhelming or calm, similarly the nature of water. Right? Emotional relationship and vitality feelings bring to life. Water is all about your emotions, right? Moving from place to place, swishy swashy, swishy swashy, swishy swashy, right? Sometimes you could be a water can be a liquid. Sometimes water can be a gas. Sometimes it could be a solid. Our emotions are all over the place. And that goes to the wind. What's the wind? The wind is an expression of the intellect, right? And communication. Connection to the intellect involves the pursuit of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Driven by logic, sensibility, rather than emotion. You have over here a shared visions, belief, articulation of thoughts. Whereas fire, that is the element of the willpower, self-awareness. Connection to the willpower motivates. Willpower motivation relates to self-esteem, motivation, and the drive for self-actualization. It represents the inner yearning and drive, aiming to overcome obstacles and achieve greatness, personal responsibility, and striving for higher goals. Now, if I was to ask everyone in this room to tell me which one of these 4 elements are an expression of your character, I'm assuming everyone would say, I'm for sure that, right? I'm for sure fire. I'm for sure water. I'm for sure wind. I'm for sure earth, right? And the truth is that you are more than just one. You're all of them, okay? Now, what's interesting, I pointed out number 7, this graph over here, which I did very quickly today in an Excel sheet. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier
yes.
to kind of put aside our thoughts on astrology, but
yes.
Is there zero connection between the 2?
You'll see there is a connection, but it's not connected the same way you think it is. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyah bidvaro. Make sure you're drinking. It's going to be a fast tomorrow. All right. Anyway, so it's you'll see there is a connection, but the zodiac doesn't align it the same way. Okay. They have their own system in how they think about it. It's different. The way Rav Chaim Vital speaks about these 4 different elements is different than the way the zodiac does. Is there overlay? For sure, because you see that it's right there in creation. Fire, days 1 and 2. Wind and water, days 2 and 5. Earth, days 3 and 6. Okay, you have some type of a correlation here between the days of creation themselves, and we know that the sky and the luminaries, the light and the luminaries, are all interconnected, and therefore the universe itself is an expression of fire. There's the 4 states are what is it? Plasma, liquid, gas, and solid. Right? That's the 4 elements. Plasma is fire. Right? Gas, we know what that is. That's the wind, air, right? You have liquid, right? You have solid, which is earth, matter, right? So you have these 4 constants throughout all of creation, and they appear not just in the material world, they appear also in our consciousness, right? Our consciousness has these 4 expressions, all integrated into this thing called the human body. And some of us are more earthy, lazy and slow, just don't want to do it. Some of us are fiery and passionate and crazy, right? I'm not saying fire is crazy, right? And then you have the other 2, super intellectual, wind, right? Super emotional, water. Or we'll say a leaning towards one of the 4 more so than others. But really, there's a hierarchy here. Meaning the highest expression of the 4 elements is fire. like on that pyramid. That's the pinnacle. That's the peak. Because it's in the fire where you have movement. The fire represents represents being a man. Mordechai ish tzaddik, right? It happens to do that. That fire itself is where you are expressing your will at its highest degree, highest expression. It's coming out in fire. And you could choose to do that. The fact that now that you're aware of the fact that, maybe I am earth, maybe I am more water, maybe I am wind. But at the end of the day, the thing that motivates everything between these four elements is fire at the core. Now, is fire physical or not? Because what is fire? Fire is the release of energy from matter. It's like a weird thing. That's all it is. Everything in the world has energy. This lectern is really a big ball of energy that's slowed down into this mass. But all the fire is doing is releasing the energy that's stored inside of this lectern. Would you say that light is physical? No. That's a weird thing. But everything you and I experience around you is really energy. It's in solid form. It's called matter, right? So if everything on this chart is really physical, and fire, which is the fourth highest element, right? Is there room for spirituality? And therefore, I would say the fifth element is the neshama. If we're building up a chart of the lowest parts of man to the highest parts of man, you have the earth, water, wind, fire in that structure, okay? And then right above fire is your neshama. This is why the pasuk says, "Ki ner Hashem nishmat ha'adam," right? The pasuk says that God's candle is man's soul. The little flick, they say in Yiddish, the pintel yid, right? The little flame that's flickering in each one of us, that little flame above us, that is the section between this thing called the fire, the motivation part in my mind, right? And my soul. That's the fifth element. This is where it all bridges together. Look at number 5. It's the Nefesh HaChaim. He says, man is said to have been the last to have been created because of his body, but he is also characterized as being the first to be created because of his soul, which is the breath of God's mouth. It's rooted in the highest spiritual world, which exists before creation even began. So we say that Histakel Oraita, God looked into the Torah and created the world, right? God looks into the Torah and created the world. How does that even work? God looks into the Torah and creates the world. Doesn't God first create the world and then create the Torah? There's a spiritual realm of existence, and everything that is here in the material world is an expression of something that's happening on a spiritual plane. All material things could only be present because of a spiritual reality that is giving this thing form. On a molecular level, everything looks exactly the same. There's no difference. And that's why we're all created b'Tselem. Everything around you, my friends, is godly. You are a spark of the divine, just like everything else is in this world. This is what Chassidut brought to the world. The idea that every single person has value. You're beautiful. You're a sparkling gem that has an aspect of godliness in them. Yes?
That's why we have to light the candle for exotic.
No, that's not why.
Candle for
Yeah, of course.
neshama,
We light candles because we like fire. No, I'm just joking. That's a really bad joke. No, I'm saying we light fires simply because it's a zechira, it's a remembrance. But it is. It's about the idea that this person brought light into the world, and we're bringing light in their memory. That's where the simple understanding is. But yeah, you could definitely take it and say that. It's a beautiful idea. All right. Look at that. Look at the parentheses over there, right? The fifth element, we're all familiar with the idea that the essence of man is the soul. This is referred to Nefesh Elokit, the godly life force. The soul is an eternal part of us that lives beyond our years in this world. When we experience our soul, we are experiencing the truest form of I. When we speak about the body, our emotions, our thoughts, our willpower, we don't truly identify with any of those things as us, but rather entities that play a role in how we operate. The true I is at the soul level. Our body, our emotions, our thoughts, and our self-esteem will change, but we will still be us. That is the highest level. The highest level of all the levels is understanding the fact that you and I are here to become something more. Derech Hashem, the Ramchal, number 9. The soul has many parts that are bound to each other like links in a chain. Each of these are bound to the one below, until the lowest one is bound to the animal soul, which in turn is linked to the blood, which is where the body and the soul meet. Okay? The Derech Hashem is saying that there are these, I'm not sure what the right word is, there are bridges between different states of existence. Okay? The blood is the bridge between the soul and the body. Okay? This is why the Torah is so particular about not eating blood, not using blood, understanding that you are what you eat, because the things that you internalize somehow become a part of who you are, and they impact your character traits and so on and so forth. The foods that you eat definitely impact you. If you're the kind of person that likes spicy stuff, you're probably more fiery by nature, right? And therefore, you like to eat the things that make you feel within a sense of equilibrium, right? We are drawn to things that remind us of ourselves. And you start thinking about it in these terms. This is your homework for this week. I want you to start thinking about your emotions, your identity, your thoughts in terms of these four elements: fire, wind, water, earth. I want you to start identifying them for yourselves. Oh, that's a very earthy thing to do. That is very watery, all those emotions. That's very cerebral, the wind, right? That's really passionate. That was me going out there and standing up and doing something, right? I want you to think of it in those terms. What you'll start seeing is you'll start identifying parts of the soul. Because remember that all of this is ultimately to get to that higher part, that fifth element, that connects me to something more. That's what I want. That's where I want to go. I want to go to that place where I get to the truest parts of who I am. We say it in Perkei Avot, Im ein ani li, ikshini la'atzmi, v'im lo achshav. Now, so it says, Im ani li mi li. What is the difference between ani and li and atzmi?
Ani is me.
And what's li?
Li is forward.
Okay, but it really means the same thing. And what's atzmi?
It's myself.
So there's just three different ways of saying me.
Me, myself, and I.
Right. It's something like that, right? But what's happening on a Kabbalistic level is that when you say in the morning, Modeh Ani, what part of the Ani are you referring to? The soul. The Atzmi is really the body, right? The Li is a whole other philosophical conversation, which we're not going to get into. But in a nutshell, when I say Ani, what does it mean to be me? Did you ever have that experiment when someone says, point to yourselves? And you go like this, and the rabbi's like, no, you got it wrong, that's not who you are, this is not who you are. What's the truest expression of you? Right? My thoughts is the truest expression of me. Well, what does it mean to be me? This is not me. Well, most people do this because we identify our identities with our bodies first, and not our thoughts. I could prove it to you. Ready? Let's do a little science experiment. Imagine in about 10 years from now, we have the ability of uploading all of your memories into a computer. Everything that makes you you. Okay, and I suck out all of your memories, okay, and I find somebody else's body, I suck out all their memories, and I delete their memories, and I download all of your memories into this other person's body. You wake up and you look into the mirror and it's not your face. Is that still you? Yes, it is. This is my point. This is just a spacesuit for your soul. Would you say that the spacesuit is if the spaceman is walking to the mirror, okay, and he's looking at this helmet, and he's lived here his whole life, what does he assume? That the helmet is him. But you and I both know that the helmet is not him. And I put him to sleep and I change the spacesuit and I put a different one on. He's like, oh my God, where did I go? That's not me. No, at the core, you are your thoughts. The things that are happening in your inner world are more you than the outer world. Part of what you and I are here to do is to recognize that this shell thing, this earthy thing called matter, you have to remember that we weren't created this way. Adam wasn't created with this mud earth substance. Adam was a translucent being that radiated light. He was brilliant. In the spiritual realm, The ministering angels were blinded by his brilliance. Brighter than the sun. That's what you and I are. It's just covered in this dirt. And the whole purpose of everything that you and I do as Jews is to figure out a way of connecting to the truest parts of who we are. The parts that are more patient, the parts that are more driven, the parts that are more interested in passions that are proper, the parts of us that want to go ahead and build relationships, the parts of us that want to go ahead and make the world a better, greater place, the parts of us that want to honor our parents in the most respectful way possible without destroying our own egos, right? We want to be the individuals that represent a Kiddush Hashem wherever we go. That is what you and I are here to do, but we're distracted because it's not easy relating to that part of us that's so far, far away, that fifth element. Last source over here says, "Vayom Elokim na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu kimnotenu v'yirudu b'digat ha'aryam v'ba'of ha'shamayim v'hema v'chol ha'aretz v'chol ha'remes v'remes al ha'aretz." Right? God says we're going to make man in our likeness. This is what you and I are. You're not a body. Tomorrow we have a short fast, Shavasa B'Tammuz. The fast starts tomorrow, but the morning, the essence of what Shavasa B'Tammuz brings lasts for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. What are we remembering? We're commemorating the destruction of the walls of Jerusalem. Okay? The outer walls. When you lose your walls, when you lose the defining borders that make you what you are, you're broken and you become something else. As Jews, when Shiva Asar B'Tammuz happened, we lost a part of our identities as Jews. It's no longer clear to us what we're meant to be doing here. First and second temples were destroyed. We lost a sense of self. And we've been wandering around this planet for 2,000 years with no clear home until 1948, Baruch Hashem, right? And throughout those 2,000 years, we were humiliated. Non-Jews would point at you, Jews, your ancestors, you're here today because you have people that survived the destruction of the first, second temple era and everything that happened in between. You're part of the winners of history. You come from DNA that has tiger blood running through it. You're lions. You don't even realize what you are. You've forgotten. We've had collective amnesia since Shivasar B'Tammuz. Do you understand what you are? You are an infinite being that is trapped in a finite vessel. Your soul is eternal. Your body is not. The whole purpose of this series is to help us do two things. One is spend time to work through what does it mean for me to want to connect to the higher parts of myself, right? And then how do I use the system of the elements to recognize the earthy parts of myself, the elements that are holding me back from reaching that fifth element. May we have a meaningful fast. May this Shiva Asar B'Tammuz be the last of our fast, the last of the tsar of our nation, and it be the beginning of the clarity that we need to express that greatest parts of ourselves. Have an amazing night, everybody. Thank you for coming. Mizrah Hashem will pick up next week. Thank you.